She would stop for someone she thought she could trust, and then she would be killed for it. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Cara Knott. Viewer discretion is advised. Cara Knott was born on February 11, 1966 in Ventura, California. Her family would describe her as the absolute perfect daughter. She was always very tender-hearted, and no matter what, she made time for everyone. She loved animals. She was an environmentalist. She was also a very active person. She loved to run, and she was just a sunny, outgoing, trusting individual. By 1986, she was studying at San Diego State University, and she was aspiring to become a teacher. But sadly, this would never come to fruition. By Christmas of 1986, she was dating a man by the name of Wayne Bautista. Now, on December 27th, 1986, Cara was over at his place caring for him because he was going through a bout of the flu. Around 8 p.m. on December 27th, she would leave his place and head to her home. Before she did, she gave her parents a call to say, "Hey, I'm on my way. I should be there shortly." But Cara never made it home. Around 10 p.m. that night, when she still hadn't arrived, her parents grew very concerned because this was something very unusual for her. She would never deviate from the plan, so to speak, and if she said she was on her way home and would be there shortly, she meant it. Something just felt off. By the following morning, they tried to report her missing, but given her age, police were kind of hesitant to start any kind of investigation for at least 48 hours. So her family did the searching. Now, they would find out that Cara was last seen at a Chevron station at about 8:27 p.m. She just stopped by there real quick to fill up her car and get a few snacks. Her friends and family then began going down the interstate that she would have been on driving home. They would branch off onto each off-ramp just to see if they could find anything. And on the Mercy Road off-ramp on the I-15, they would find her car. Her car was abandoned. There was no sign of anything or anyone near it. Her purse was sitting on the passenger seat. The keys were in the ignition, and the window, the driver's side window, was rolled halfway down. Now, I've covered enough of these cases to know that what people would realize is that when someone's window is rolled halfway down, after they're reported missing and they find their car, sometimes it indicates that they may have stopped for someone, like a police officer. But no one wanted to jump to any conclusions, considering Cara still wasn't found. That would change very shortly. As some of these searchers were looking over the bridge, the overpass, kind of near where her car was found, someone just looked over and they noticed a body. And when they approached, it was in fact the deceased body of Cara Knott. Now, it appeared that she had been thrown over the overpass because she had a lot of bruising and a lot of scrapes and whatnot, but her cause of death would ultimately be ruled as strangulation. This was very obviously a homicide. On Cara's body, they found fibers, little gold fibers. They weren't sure obviously what those were at the time, but they would collect those fibers. By the way, I have lots of dogs, so if you hear barking in the background of my videos, sorry. So police got tips that in the area around this time was a disheveled looking homeless man who some people try to say, well, maybe it was this guy, just a vagrant who wanted to kill, I guess. To be clear, this angle was never actually investigated, because fairly quickly on, police would start getting tips from several different women. These women would call to report an officer of the California Highway Patrol. That officer was named Craig Pyer. Stories that were consistently told by these women were that Craig Pyer would pull them over near Mercy Road and have them kind of drive off the off-ramp and go in kind of like a desolate kind of remote area where he would just like talk to them for several hours and sort of like be creepy and flirt, but none of them reported any kind of physical attacks. It was really more just of very bizarre sexual harassment, but they would always leave the encounter unscathed. CHP knew about this behavior because women had reported him prior to the event of Cara Knott's murder, but no disciplinary actions were ever taken. What the fuck? And that is so frustrating because had they taken actual action, the events of this case probably would not have happened. The local news would actually work with the detectives to film a recreation of the night and the events that Cara was killed. And their hopes were to show this to the people, and that someone may have their memories jogged as to someone being spotted with Cara. Oddly enough, one of the officers who was helping on this newscast was Craig Pyer. He actually gave tips for women on what to do if some stranger tries to accost you, especially at night. Okay. Well, detectives would actually begin investigating Craig Pyer. They would collect his police uniform that he was wearing that night, including his boots. The gold fiber comes back into play here because there was gold fiber that was found on the body of Cara Knott, and it was microscopically similar to the gold fibers found on the patch on the CHP officers' uniforms. Of course, that does not necessarily mean Craig Pyer did it because all the officers wore the same uniform. On his boots, they found small droplets of blood. They would test the blood and it came back as AB positive, which is a very rare, blood type. It was the same blood type as Cara. Now, this is before DNA was extensively used to narrow down the exact person. But again, it matched the same blood type as Cara. Then you have the gold fibers. You have the fact that she was found, basically off Mercy Road, where Craig Pyer was known to pull other women aside and basically sexually harass them. But why did Cara Knott die and none of the other women were physically harmed at all? Cara was trained to fight back, and it's believed that that's exactly what she did. Fellow officers would report that Craig Pyer had scratch marks across his face very shortly after the night that Cara was murdered. So it's believed that some kind of altercation took place. She refused him. He tried to do something. She fought back, and he retaliated by probably hitting her over the head with a flashlight, they think, and then he took a rope and then he strangled her to death before then throwing her over the overpass. Police would also look at Craig Pyer's logbook for the evening of the murder. They noticed that there was a section around 9:30 p.m., which is when they believe the murder took place, where he erased something and penciled something else in to make it look like he was somewhere else to give himself an alibi. Witnesses in the area, sometime around 10 o'clock, would see the officer looking very disheveled and speeding very fast down the road, as if he was trying to run away or escape something. Detectives had enough evidence at that point, and they would charge him with the murder of Cara Knott. He would go to trial, and the prosecutor in this trial was, a known drunk, and he apparently didn't really, object to much of anything. He didn't really question the witnesses very strongly. And ultimately, this would result in a hung jury. The vote was 7-5 guilty, but there was a mistrial because it wasn't, unanimous. So then he was retried again with a different prosecutor who went at this much more strongly, and he was able to convince the jury. He was found guilty of the murder of Cara Knott. On August 4th, 1988, he was sentenced to 25 years to life. In 2004, he would go up for parole, and the parole board said, well, if you provide your DNA and we can use that DNA to rule you out of this, then, he said no, he refused. The parole was denied. Asked why did he deny giving his DNA? He refused to answer. At this point, he has been denied parole pretty much every time he's tried, and he is still rotting away in prison. And that is it for today's episode. So we will see you for the next time. And until then, ta-ta for now, true crime-aroonies.